But the hole that Joey leaves, it just can't be described. I don't know that there's a bottom to it.
It doesn't matter how many months or years go by, a parent never gets over losing a child, and that mother that we're hearing from lost her son in a very violent and senseless way.
He was killed by just picking up an Uber request. The suspect, Shalakai Sanchez, faced a federal judge this morning for a status check on his case.
He didn't pick a destination. He picked a person, opened the app, scrolled through available drivers, and chose one. Not because he needed a ride somewhere, not because he was lost, or late, or stranded. He told police exactly why he did it, to let off some steam. That was it. That was the reason a young man with a whole life ahead of him never made it home that night. The person he chose was Joey Andrus, 20-something years old, fresh out of college, first night on the road as an Uber driver. A guy his own mother describes as someone who oozed joy, who was generous out loud, who lived with color and laughter and a kind of warmth that people don't forget once they've felt it. He borrowed money for gas that same night. 3 hours before he was killed, he called his mom and asked for just enough to fill his tank so he could get started. She said yes. She was proud. Her son was doing it, standing on his own, building something, moving forward. And somewhere across the city, a man named Shalakai Sanchez had already made his decision. In every home, behind every closed door, there's a story waiting to be uncovered. Welcome to Dark Whispers, where we dive deep into the hidden truths of domestic crime and the relationships that turn deadly. If you're drawn to real stories, powerful insights, and the shadows most people avoid, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and step into the whispers they never wanted you to hear. Joey Andrus was not someone who moved through life quietly. His mother, Allison Green, talks about him the way only a parent who truly saw their child can. She said he knew what it meant to struggle, really knew it from the inside. And because of that, he never once looked away from someone who was going through it. He showed up for people, consistently, genuinely, without making a big deal out of it. That was just who he was. He had recently graduated from the University of New Mexico, a milestone his family felt deeply. College was done. The next chapter was open, and Joey was already moving into it. He had started his own technology company called Byte-Spire, building it from the ground up with the kind of focus and ambition that made the people around him believe he would actually pull it off. Driving for Uber was never the end goal. It was just the smart move. A way to keep money coming in while Byte-Spire found its footing. Practical, grounded, the kind of thinking that made Allison proud every time she saw it in him. She remembers the phone call. He needed money for gas, just enough to start. She gave it to him without hesitation, and when she hung up, she felt good. Her son was independent. He was doing it the right way, working for what he needed, not waiting for it to come to him. That was 3 hours before officers knocked on her door. She had been getting ready for bed. She remembers actually feeling like she might sleep well that night. Really sleep. The kind that doesn't come easy when you're a mother with a lot on your mind. Then came the knock. 3 officers standing at her door in the dark. Her first thought was that maybe Joey had gotten into a small accident, maybe a fender bender, maybe a minor incident of some kind. She did not know why she would have thought that, but her mind went anywhere except the truth, because the truth was not something a person prepares for. They told her Joey was gone, and just like that, the version of the future she had been imagining, the one where her son's company grew, where she got birthday calls and inside jokes and all the small, ordinary moments that make a life, that version closed. What Albuquerque police would later piece together was this: Sheliky Sanchez had not stumbled into violence that night. He had gone looking for it. He opened the Uber app with a purpose, scrolled through drivers at random, and selected one. Not for a ride. According to what he allegedly told investigators, he wanted to kill someone. Joey Andrus happened to be the name the app served up. That was the only reason. There was no history between them. No conflict. No argument. Joey did not know this man. This man did not know Joey. Joey was simply there, available, online, ready to work. And that was enough for Sheliky Sanchez. There are people who act out of rage, who lose control in a moment and do something they can never take back. And then there are people who plan, who think it through, who make a decision in cold blood and then move toward it, one step at a time. Sheliky Sanchez did not snap that night. He chose. By the time he opened that app, something had already shifted in him, something he had not bothered to control or walk back from. Whatever was going on in his life, whatever weight he was carrying, he had arrived at a place where another person's life felt like a solution to it. Not a consequence. Not a line he was afraid to cross. A solution. A release. He wanted to feel something go away, and he decided that killing someone would do it. That thinking that a stranger's death could be a form of relief is the part that stays with you when you look at this case. Because Joey didn't do anything. He didn't wrong this man. He didn't know this man existed. He was simply online, available, doing what any new driver does on their first night, waiting for that first ping, that first fare, that first small proof that the plan was going to work. The ping came. Joey accepted it. He had no way of knowing what was waiting for him on the other end of that request. No way of knowing that the person who had called for a ride had not actually needed one. No red flags on the app, no warning. Just a name, a pickup location, and the assumption, the completely reasonable assumption, that this was just a passenger, just a person who needed to get somewhere. That assumption cost Joey his life. What happened inside that car is the part that Albuquerque investigators would have to reconstruct carefully, because the only person who came out of it alive was the one who had gone in wanting someone to die. Joey picked up Sheliky Sanchez. The ride began like any other. And then, at some point during that trip, without warning, without any argument or conflict that would have given Joey even a second to react, Sanchez attacked him. Joey Andrus was killed on his first night driving, in a car he had filled with borrowed gas just hours before, by a man who had selected him at random from a list of available drivers because he wanted to let off some steam. He was gone before his mother even knew anything was wrong. The details of exactly how the attack unfolded, the precise sequence of events inside that vehicle, those details belong to the investigation and to the courtroom. But what is known, what Sanchez himself allegedly confirmed to police, is that there was no provocation. Joey did nothing. He was not rude. He did not threaten anyone. He simply showed up, did his job, and was killed for it. There are crimes that happen in the heat of a moment, and then there are crimes where someone makes a choice, a real, deliberate, thought-out choice, to end another person's life. This was the second kind, and that matters, because it means Joey never had a chance. From the moment Sanchez picked up that phone and scrolled through those drivers, Joey's fate had already been decided for him without his knowledge, without his consent, and without any reason in this world that could ever make sense to the people who loved him. Allison Green was in bed when her son took his last breath. She was finally resting. And Joey was out there on the road, doing exactly what she had watched him work toward, being independent, earning his own way, moving forward. she would never get to see where that road was supposed to take him. When Albuquerque police began working the case, the trail was not invisible. Uber, by nature, is a documented service. Every ride is logged: the pickup, the driver, the passenger, the route, the time. Sanchez had requested the ride under his own account. He had been matched to Joey through the platform. That digital record became one of the foundational pieces of what investigators had to work with. But a paper trail and an arrest are two different things. Law enforcement moved carefully. This was not a case where the facts were tangled, or the identity of the suspect was a mystery for long. The investigation pointed towards Sanchez with the kind of clarity that comes when someone uses a traceable app to locate their victim. What took time was the process, building the case the right way, making sure that when this went to court, there would be no gaps that a defense attorney could exploit. In the meantime, Allison Green was living inside the worst days of her life. She had buried her son. She had stood at a graveside and done the thing she said no mother should ever have to do: place her child in the ground. And now she was waiting for a system to move at its own pace while she carried grief that had no bottom. She described it that way. No bottom. Like a hole that just kept going, with no floor to land on, no point where the falling stopped. Months passed. Reality, she said, still hadn't fully sunk in. The mind protects itself when loss is this large. It lets the truth in slowly, in pieces, because the whole thing at once would be unbearable. And then she walked into a courtroom and saw Sheliki Sanchez in person. That was the moment it became real. She had traveled hundreds of miles to be there. She sat in that room and looked at the man who had scrolled through a list of drivers, picked her son's name, called for a ride, and killed him. And whatever complicated thing grief does to a person, whatever way it shifts and changes shape over time, seeing him brought it all into sharp, undeniable focus. Her son was gone. This man was why. And now the only thing left to fight for was accountability.
Yeah, Allison Green traveled hundreds of miles to be here. She says months after the death of her son, reality still hadn't sunk in. But then she saw Sheliki Sanchez in court.
No mom should ever have to place her child in the ground.
Allison Green says the pain of losing her son, Joseph Andrus, is something she struggles to explain.
He just oozed with joy and generosity. And he did it loud, with lots of color. And he just knew what it was like to struggle.
And there wasn't anything Andrus wouldn't do to help other people.
I'm proud of my son for being as kind as he was to people. The world needs more Joeys, fewer suspects. And we all have choices.
Green says just weeks before Andrus was killed, he graduated from the University of New Mexico. He started a company called Byte-Spire Technology and decided to start driving for Uber on the side.
It was his first day. He was trying to be independent, and he was doing it. I was so proud of him. 3 hours before, he'd asked to borrow money for gas so that he could start driving for Uber so he could earn money.
Then Joseph was gone. Green remembers the moment officers came to her door.
And I was getting ready for bed, going to bed early that night for a change, thinking I could really sleep finally. And 3 police officers showed up. And I thought maybe Joey was in a car accident or got into a fight. I don't know why they'd come by for that, but I never thought.
Albuquerque police say Sheliki Sanchez scrolled Uber at random, picking a driver to kill. He allegedly told police to let off some steam.
There won't be any more memories. There won't be any more birthday calls. There won't be any more telling me I'm 25 when I'm really 50-something.
Green is still mourning, but is ready for justice.
My son's message was a message of hope. I think when a line's been crossed, And the hope becomes a hope for justice and responsibility, accountability.
Green knows it can be years until Andrus gets the justice he deserves. Sanchez is facing multiple charges, including first-degree murder. Because they are federal, if found guilty, he could face the death penalty. Guys, back to you.
Sheliki Sanchez was taken into custody and charged in connection with the death of Joseph Andrus. The case moved into the federal system, which meant the process would be long, structured, and governed by a pace that grieving families almost always describe as unbearable. Status hearings, continuances, procedural dates on a calendar that a mother has to track while simultaneously trying to figure out how to live in a world her son is no longer in. Allison Green showed up anyway. Every time the case was called, she was there. She traveled hundreds of miles to sit in that courtroom because she believed that showing up was part of it, that her presence was a statement, a refusal to let Joey's name fade into a case number on a docket. She sat a few feet away from the man charged with killing her son, and she did not look away. In court, the weight of what Sanchez allegedly told investigators hung over everything. His own words, that he had scrolled through Uber drivers at random and selected one to kill, specifically to let off some steam, were the kind of statement that shifts a room. There is no way to frame that as anything other than what it is. It was not an accident. It was not a moment of lost control. By his own account, it was a hunt, a deliberate, calculated decision to find a stranger and end their life because he wanted the release of it. The prosecution's case rested on that foundation: the digital record of the ride, the alleged confession, and the complete absence of any provocation on Joey's part. There was nothing Sanchez could point to that Joey had done, nothing that had passed between them. The defense had no conflict to work with, no bad blood to reframe, no history to complicate the picture. Joey was innocent in every sense of the word, and the evidence made that plain. Allison sat through it all. She listened to the legal language, the procedural arguments, the back and forth of a system that moves on its own timeline regardless of how urgently the people most affected need it to move faster. She had said herself that she knew justice could take years. She was prepared to wait. But Decide Sanchez's fate understood exactly who they were deciding for. She said her son's message was a message of hope. And she said that when a line gets crossed, when someone takes a life without reason, without remorse, without a single justification, hope does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes hope for justice, hope for responsibility, hope that accountability still means something in a world where a young man can borrow money for gas, drive a stranger across the city, and never come home. Joey Andrus was 20-something years old. He had a degree, a company, a mother who loved him out loud, and a community that felt his absence like a weight. He lived generously. He knew what struggle felt like, and instead of hardening him, it made him reach toward people. His mother said the world needs more Joeys, and she is right. The kind of person who shows up for others, who builds something from nothing, who borrows gas money on a Tuesday night because he is too determined to wait. That kind of person is rare, and the world gets smaller every time one of them is taken. What this case leaves behind is not just grief. It is a question that does not have a comfortable answer, about how much danger exists in the ordinary moments. Joey was not in a dark alley. He was not in a high-risk situation by any reasonable definition. He was doing something millions of people do every single day. He logged onto an app, accepted a ride, and drove. The violence that found him was not something he could have predicted or protected himself from, because it came dressed as something completely normal. Allison Green has carried this story forward with a dignity that is hard to put into words. She has not retreated into silence. She has spoken about her son with clarity and love, insisted on accountability with steadiness, and refuse to let the public forget that behind every case number is a person, a specific, irreplaceable, fully alive person who deserved to come home. There will be no more birthday calls, no more inside jokes, no more watching her son build the life he had every right to build. But there will be accountability. Allison is counting on it. And so is everyone who knew Joey's name, everyone who heard his story, and everyone who understands that justice, slow as it moves, is the least of what he is owed. Rest, Joey. The world knew what it had in you. Some of us just found out too late.